The gospel's structure, I would say that the gospel's like spinal cord, and its structure really is centered on God's love. And that was one of the, the things that I had to wrestle with and really come to terms with, is that everything revolves around God's love. And sometimes our traditions, our beliefs, all these other things that are secondary can get in the way of God's love. And the more I read the Gospels, the more I saw Jesus' ministry in a very diverse place with very diverse people. And like you mentioned, Paul, when I see Paul's way of interacting with the community around him of diverse people, I really do believe that if we keep what's central, which is God's love, all the other things become secondary. And that's how, for me, I had to come to terms with that. Keeping what's important in the gospel and kind of filtering through what is tradition, what are my beliefs, and really what is the main message that cannot be changed or touched. I grew up in a very conservative home, and conservative religiously, and I would just say all around. And when I moved off to college, I actually went a boarding school off to Washington, D.C., about 6 hours from home. And that was, for me, just kind of, I felt like a fish out of water. Just a whole new way of worship, a whole new way of doing things, even from the spiritual side all the way to even my day-to-day. It took me a while to kind of fit into that environment. On top of that, I was 16 when I went off to college. And so like, I was not only like in that transition myself personally, just getting over being away from parents, but just overall, it was, adjusting to this whole new perspective of doing church, community, and worshiping. It was difficult. I was challenged many a times because some of the things that I have grown up believing, I would even go as far as to say some traditions that had been, week to week, day to day things that I believed in, now were being brought into question. And it took some soul searching. It took even a community of friends there in the dorm, my community of even theology majors who we studied together with, to really challenge me and kind of break me out of this. Maybe there's more than just this that you know. I think that's one of the most difficult parts is the pride. It's like, I've done it like this for years. Some of the times I didn't even know why, or I've worshiped this way, or this is the only style that I've listened for so many years. And so it was challenging. I felt uncomfortable. I felt out of place. I felt awkward sometimes in that. But I think it was when I was inward centered, when it was all about me, that's when I would get in my own way. I think my pride kind of got into the way of saying, hey, maybe there is another way. Maybe it's not they're wrong or I'm right and they're wrong, or it's just maybe we're just different, and God speaks to different people in different ways. As far as doubts, I mean, I think when it comes to me personally, the doubts have always been tied to these major life moments, milestones in my life. I mean, times where either I was, at the age of 20, I was in the hospital for a whole week, hospitalized for something I had no idea what it was, all the way till now, going through the birth of a preemie child for 3 months, going to the hospital, not being able to bring your child home. All these moments, along with many other, really, that's where I believe, for me personally, there was some doubt creeping in those moments. But it was those times where I wrestled not only with just the moment, what was happening in my life, but also with God. We had honest conversations with God. I can honestly say I had these prayers, like long prayers, like yelling at times even with God, and crying together with my wife over different things going on in our lives, that I think that those were healthy, though. The more honest I was about it, about my doubts, the more I talked to people and mentors in my own spiritual journey, I started honest conversation that helped me wrestle these things. I think sometimes we brush these issues under the rug. Like, doubt for many of us is a taboo thing. To doubt certain things is like, you should never question your pastor, you should never question your leaders. But I found out personally that when you wrestle with these doubts, And when you talk about these things, I think your faith will actually strengthen and deepen the more you talk about these issues. When you're vulnerable and when you're open, it opens doors to helping others who are also going through that same experience. One of the things for me is just transparency, honest vulnerability. I feel like the more you do that, the more you're open with your church. Church wants to help. Church really is they want to find an opportunity to like offer some help. I think instinctively everyone wants to be able to do something and help someone. But I think sometimes when we become too sheltered and we've become too bubbled in and we don't ask for the help, or we're not transparent about the issues that we're going through, I think sometimes we miss out on giving people the opportunity to serve and volunteer and help. And so I would just suggest, that we be more honest with those around us. Whether we're going through doubts, whether we have needs, whether we're going through insecurities up and down, dealing with emotional or mental health issues, I think as a church, we should be able to have a safe place where we can talk about these things so that we can give the opportunities for others as well to help us out. I feel like at the end of the day, we miss out on amazing people, on amazing community, on amazing just relationships when we start drawing boundaries. The moment when we start, almost checking ID at the door, do you believe what I believe, or do you look the way that I look, or do you feel a certain way about this belief or that belief or whatever? I feel like when we start growing boundaries or drawing boundaries, we miss out on meaningful relationships with people who will challenge us, people who will actually push us to grow. And for me, that was so important when I went off to college, is going beyond that boundaries that I had personally drawn on the sand, and just meet people who really challenged me. And I am who I am, I believe, because I was open to relationships with people who challenged my thinking. One of the biggest analogies that I've had in the past is, I had a friend who once told me, do you want to go play golf? And I said, no, I've seen golf enough on TV to know that that's like probably one of the most boring sports in the history of this planet. And then he told me something. He said, go try it out. Let's just go try it out. Let's go to the driving range. Let's go, hit some balls and let's see what happens. And a couple weeks later, I was finding myself buying some putters and some drivers, because I had such an amazing time when I experienced it, rather than just sitting watching others engaged in this sport and hearing the commentators. I believe that church is very similar in the sense that we go to church not just to be observers, but I think that God is very specific in the gospel message that He's changing us to then share that message with others. And so I believe that being the church is one of the vital components in our personal growth, in our personal spiritual life. The more we help people, the more we are open to being the church. I don't think sometimes we realize it, but we're helping ourselves more than we even realize. By helping others, I myself am growing. And so I really do think it's just that. It's just give it a chance. You may not think that you are capable or have the gifts to be able to serve or volunteer in church, but I believe that if God put you in that church, He has you there for a reason. Find a way to get involved, find a way to get engaged, and just don't view church as a place that you go to, but view it as a place that you become part of this movement.